Thank you, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Cavallo, we appreciate that. Carrie, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Velto,
Present.
Councilmember Felix,
Present.
Mayor Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Zuniga,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott. Here.
All right, I guess I'll turn it over to the city manager for direction, or, excuse me, city attorney.
Not much direction, I just wanted to point out for people who may want to speak to this, that this is, we're really talking in closed session under the personnel exception, but nobody's going to be substantively evaluated. The council's not going to make decisions on factual disputes. We're trying to pick a process that council feels is fairest to get into this process. So I don't know if that's going to change anyone's mind about what they were going to say, but I think it's probably useful to know that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Carrie.
This is a time for any citizen to comment on any item listed on the agenda only. Anyone wishing to address the legislative body is requested to submit a speaker card to the city clerk at or prior to speaking. The speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes, and the use of visual aids will be included in the time limit. This time I have 8 cards. I'll call up 2 at a time and ask the second speaker to be on my right and to announce your name when you come up to the lectern.
Thank you.
First is April Flores, followed by Rami Assad.
Good morning, Mayor Stone, council members, Upland employees, and Upland residents. My name is April Flores, and I'm the president of the Upland City Employees Association. I would like to provide some clarification on the vote of no confidence for Ms. Vagnozzi. First, I'd like to say that the goal of any association or union is to obtain a fair contract and safe working conditions for their workers. Our current presence and participation at council meetings as a vote of no confidence is not solely based on...
Excuse me, just a moment, Ms. Flores. City manager, city attorney.
I can't, she's talking generally on the subject matter. I can't.
Oh, it's okay to discuss negotiations?
Well, I think I don't know what she's going to discuss at this point, but I think these people have to give some latitude in what they say. So.
Okay, thank you, and thank you.
No problem. So the association's vote of no confidence is not because of a lack of a contract. If we were to have one a year and a half ago, have a COLA for every year for the last 11 years, or be given a significant raise, we would still be participating and attending. The reason why the vote of no confidence went through is because we do not trust Ms. Vagnozzi, and we do not feel she has the qualities of a leader. A leader does not act in a way to intimidate or retaliate against employees or is complicit when others do so. By now you're aware of an incident of workplace violence and harassment that has occurred. Ms. Vagnozzi first attempted to cover it up. She did not properly investigate, and she did not provide a safe environment for her employees. And this was because of her personal opinion of them. It is absolutely unacceptable for any leader to put the safety and well-being of employees at risk. As for the vote of no confidence, the 92% is not based on a small amount of the membership. Of the 100 members of the membership, 83 participated in the vote of no confidence, and some did not participate. They were citing fear of retaliation, especially for those who were on probation. So as you can see, the 92% was not based on a small amount, a handful of members. If you're being told that, it is nothing more than a lie to discredit the employees. We are working towards creating a culture of accountability, promote transparency, bring the city of Upland back to being a desirable city to work for, and we are looking to the council to make decisions necessary to pave the way for these common goals to come to fruition. Thank you.
After Mr. Assad is Rick LeBlanc.
Good morning. My name is Rami Assad. I am a board member with the Upland City Employees Association. I'm here today to share an incident that you are partially aware of. On January 22nd, 2019, I reported an incident to the Human Resource Department Without going in details, the city manager, who was also our HR director, violated policy, broke labor laws, and failed to provide a safe environment for her staff. Excuse me, I'm going through a cold. This was not a mistake, and it's not because she didn't know better. She intentionally did this because of Ms. Vagnosi's disdain for me, due to my actions as a union representative. During the meeting, the city manager initially tried to tell me how I should feel. Then she attempted to bribe me by offering me full wages to stay at home and be quiet. I'll quote her. You will be paid to stay home and do whatever you like. You don't need to use your vacation or sick time. You will be paid to stay home, and on the books, it will look as if you're here at work. End of quote. On the condition of my silence and allowing the person who physically harassed me to come to work and conduct business as usual. She was willing to violate policy again and have taxpayers cover the cost by me sitting at home. She told me that while at work, I should just stay away from my assailant's side of the building. I told Ms. Vagnosi I did not feel comfortable with her compromising with my safety and placing the responsibility on me to avoid contact with the person who physically battered me. Ms. Vagnosi's disregard for harassment and physical work safety caused me to tell her that I would be contacting my attorney after the meeting. And only then did Ms. Vagnosi state that she would be terminating the employee's contract effective that evening, which did not happen. That person was allowed to stay nearly a full week after the incident, which was a complete departure from workplace and violence harassment protocol. I stand here before you to implore this council to hire a neutral investigator without input or involvement of the city manager to investigate my incident and the incident of other employees. I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to have one of my coworkers in his 3 minutes finish my part. Thank you.
After Mr. LeBlanc is Mark Walters.
My name is Rick LeBlanc. I'm a board member for the City Employees Association. I'm just here to wrap up what Mr. Assad was trying to convey. Mrs. Mayor and Council, we stand here before you asking Council to place the City Manager on administrative leave until an investigation is completed to prevent her from continuing efforts to influence witnesses, manipulate evidence, and use management bullying to intimidate employees from telling the truth about this and other incidences. Failure to do so will make the council complicit in this gross and intentional violation of law, policy, and employees' rights. It will show the public that corruption and cronyism in Upland is alive and well. Mr. Velto, at the last meeting you stated the problem with the city is we hired the wrong people for the job. And we agree with you in allowing Ms. Vagnosi to hire someone to oversee the HR department that will be responsible for investigating her actions will be the wrong thing to do. Thank you very much.
After Mr. Walters is Nick Peelman.
Good morning, Mayor Stone, Mayor Pro Tem Elliott, Councilman Zuniga, Councilman Felix, and Councilman Velto. First, I'd like to give a shout out to Carlos from FYI Technology for live streaming this meeting to all 1,411 members of the Upland Coalition of Concerned Citizens. We are here bright and early this morning at this special emergency meeting to have you evaluate the performance of our city manager, Jeanette Vagnosi. I personally believe it is more of a disciplinary action against her, but unfortunately, with the way her employment contract is written, she cannot be terminated at this time. Each and every one of you ladies and gentlemen took an oath before sitting on the dais. This oath was essentially to, quote, do the right thing, unquote. At this point, with these numerous disciplinary actions I've heard about, the right thing would be to terminate Jeanette Vagnosi. At this point, with 92% of the city employees taking a vote of no confidence against Jeanette Vignosi, the right thing would be to terminate her. Because she cannot be terminated at this time, the right thing to do would be to place her on administrative leave until we can find a suitable temporary replacement, such as Public Works Director Rosemary Horning or Police Chief Goodman. Councilman Felix, do you remember on your last night here before being sworn into City Councilman, you stood right here at this podium and begged the old council not to promote Jeanette Vignosi? Councilman Robinson and Felipe called you too new and green to make a serious decision such as this promotion for Jeanette Vignosi. And here's a recording.
Council will understand that, but it will take time. And if they're not satisfied with that, they can cut it loose.
To repeat, and if they're not satisfied with that, they can cut her loose. It's time to cut her loose. Lastly, Councilman Velto, you have told numerous people here that your family and Jeanette's family are best of friends, and we ask you to do the right thing and recuse yourself. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, Mr. Washington, I've never said that. I've said that her mother and my mother were friends. I did not meet no Jeanette Vignosi until I showed up here at City Council. That's a fact. I've never said that. I made it very clear at one of the meetings that people say that I know people.
As I said, family members.
I have never met her until I came this here. So I want to clarify that. We're talking about me. This is me at this position here. I want the residents and the people in this audience to know this. I met Jeanette Vignosi the first time ever here. Okay?
Also, Mr. City Attorney, I want to clarify something here that Mr. Walters just spoke of, that this was an emergency meeting. This was not an emergency meeting. This is a special meeting. There's a big difference. And this is not an evaluation of the city manager. It's an evaluation on a process. So I want to make that clear. Thank you. Mr. Pillman, you can come forward.
After Mr. Peelman is Noah Duran.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. My name is Nick Pillman. I'm the president of the Upland Police Officers Association. The majority of our meetings with Ms. Vignosi have been because of contract negotiations, but I'm here this morning to tell you that our concerns in her leadership extend way beyond that. Major mathematical errors, mismanagement, and her attempts at undocumented and off-the-record deals are not only concerning, but are alarming. As law enforcement, we are held to a standard of honesty and integrity, virtues that every person involved in public service should possess. We think it's absolutely necessary that a city manager would be held to these standards as well. A police officer leads by example, as should the highest-ranking city employee. There should be zero tolerance when it comes to questionable practices, such as $450,000 set aside to fund our fight against the hardworking employees of the city, and mathematical errors of well over $500,000. The constant unfair labor practices under her leadership and the constant neglect to fix or deal with mistakes have made it nearly impossible to work with Ms. Vignosi on almost all issues. The Upland Police Officers Association represents the hardworking rank-and-file police officers, from patrol officers to detectives, and a lot of our members have recently displayed major concerns regarding our city manager conduct. The Upland POA is comprised of about 50 members, and other than a few brand new officers that are currently in training, all were asked this one simple question. That question was, do you have confidence in the leadership of City Manager Vignosi? 100% of those members responded no. 100% of your police officers do not have confidence in the city manager, and that is disheartening and extremely concerning. Thanks to the outstanding leadership and progressive thinking of Chief Goodman, the Upland Police Department is operating extremely effectively and gaining momentum on the criminal element. But now we just need leadership at the city level that can be trusted, a city manager that values the hardworking employees that are committed to the city of Upland, a city manager that realizes a police force cannot effectively and adequately protect the community when it continues to be depleted by officers leaving for other agencies. Help us protect Upland. Thank you.
After Mr. Duran is Anthony Cabayan.
morning. I'm Mo Duran, and I'm the president of the Upland Police Management Association. I stand here today to express that our association conducted a survey of all its members, which resulted in a 100% vote of no confidence in Ms. Vagnozzi's ability to lead the city as a city manager. Although I do not have sufficient time to go over the entire job description for the position of city manager, I want to point out certain words and phrases within her job description that include professional ethics of city management, accountability for city operations, reports directly to the city council, advises the city council on the financial statuses and general conditions of the city, extensive knowledge of management theory and practice, management of a positive employee relations program, maintains effective council and staff relations, deals constructively with conflict and develops effective resolutions. We've all been present at numerous council meetings where Ms. Vagnozzi has been questioned regarding issues directly related to these areas of her job description. Her ethics and integrity have come into question numerous times. She has been called out for improperly reporting city finances, her inability to properly handle employee conflicts, exposing the city to unnecessary litigation of punitive payouts, and her use of direct and indirect bullying tactics against city employees who voiced their concern with her lack of leadership. This position is clearly the top management position within the city, and as such it requires strong leadership skills, which she clearly lacks. We, as an association comprised entirely of management personnel, understand that an organization needs strong leadership and management skills that push the organization towards success. Her contentious employee relationships clearly challenge this idea. Ms. Vagnozzi does not seem to understand that management and leadership are not synonymous. Managers point their fingers and give directions which employees follow because they are obligated to do so. Leaders use sound judgment, experience, and knowledge to gain trust and influence to accomplish the organization's goals. Whether it's been due to outside influences limiting the leadership of this organization or the improper vetting of candidates, this city has long suffered from the absence of a strong organizational leadership. It is time to move this organization in a positive direction. It is time to replace Ms. Vagnozzi with qualified and competent city manager who will lead this organization. I would also like to add that we've been made aware of bullying tactics by a certain bargaining group against a subordinate group because they don't believe in or support that group. I'm putting all of you on notice that retaliation against a protected association activities are illegal, especially if they are being employed by contract personnel who have no business in the bargaining group's efforts to improve their working conditions and enhance the city's leadership practices. Thank you.
After Mr. Kabayan is Ralph Cavallo.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Anthony Cabayan. I'm the Vice President of the Upland Police Management Association. Today I'd like to discuss Ms. Vagnozzi's appointment to the city manager position. Prior to her appointment, there was a lot of opposition that was brought to the attention of the former council. Nonetheless, the council moved forward with her appointment. It has been over 3 months since her appointment, and she has yet to show any progress in making amends with her employees. Considering we have a high turnover of city managers, which has caused us to question the city's selection process for the city manager position. According to the staff report dated November 26, 2018, a request was made by Mayor Stone and former councilmember Sid Robinson to bring forward the appointment of Ms. Vagnozzi to city manager. One of the reasons cited for appointment was the continuity of service. Ms. Vagnozzi's knowledge of current projects is crucial during this period of leadership transition. One of the current projects was labor negotiations. Prior to her appointment to city manager, she was the assistant city manager, and one of her responsibilities was contract negotiations. Why would we appoint someone to be our city manager if they couldn't manage to negotiate a labor contract in a timely manner? How do we think they would perform on other tasks and responsibilities? We also noticed that there was no mention of her performance during the selection process for the city manager position, or any mention of it being a competitive selection process. That causes us to question again, was there a selection process? What did it consist of? Did the previous council have an opportunity to evaluate the other candidates? We'd like to ask our current council to go back and look at the various steps of the hiring process and read any and all evaluations, recommendations written about all of the candidates. Doing so may provide some insight into the quality of the other applicants to show whether or not there were any more qualified candidates interested in the position. Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Steve Yerbaum. I'm a resident of Upland. And before we proceed, I think that there is a little clarity that needs to be made based on some of the comments that have been made here. First off, with respect, Mr. Follow, good morning. I'm glad you came to talk. Ms. Vagnosi did hire an assistant. She hired a consultant right out of the gate when she was hired as a city manager. And that consultant was paid several $1,000s to oversee the administrative side of the city. And if I misunderstood that, please let me know. Even though the label would not be assistant, I'm quite sure that that's what she did. Number two, with regards to Chino Hills, sir, it's a wonderful community, and you didn't allude to the fact that the city manager who was there probably started at a step level, at the bottom step of their pay grade, like almost every single employee here does. And I do believe that Mrs. Vagnosi, during the course of pay increases for the city employees, the police employees, also in her contract has the ability to make more money. Now, that being said, Madam Mayor, with respect, you corrected one of the other citizens here and said that this was not a public, or excuse me, was not a performance evaluation. And the form that you signed that had your signature on here that was posted online clearly said it's a performance evaluation, not a process. It says public employee performance evaluation, title city manager. Now, with that being said, I want to remind you, since this is maybe a little confusion and there may be a little bit of ability or inability to focus on what is happening here this morning, you have 92% of the city employees of this city, 100% of the Police Officers Association of this city, and 100% of the Management Association of the Police Department of this city, who just sat here before you, stepped up and told you that they have no confidence in the city manager. I would tell you as a citizen, I have no confidence in the city manager because she's a liar. I can say that because she personally lied to my face. I can tell you that she personally acknowledged wrongdoing to my face a year and a half ago when she was advised and consulted about some business not related to the city and related to obtaining records. She's a liar. Now, in closing, what you need to do, because this you need to consider placing her on administrative leave with pay, which follows along in concert with her contract, pending the results of an outside investigation. Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor.
Yes, will you please explain that one more time so they understand?
I'm going to explain it, although it's elusive. So, if you're having a closed session that has anything to do with personnel, you have to, Brown Act requires you to list it on the agenda as a personnel, as an evaluation, and then you have to list the name of the officer, the city official being evaluated. But what I said was part of a process of evaluation includes setting up the process. So the substance of the activities or the merits of the city manager were not the purpose of this closed session, which was asked for and set by the mayor. This is going to be about process. So I understand how you can be confused when you read those Brown Act required agenda descriptions, because they're incredibly broad. So that's the explanation for that difference.
Thank you very much, Jim, and I hope that makes it clear for you now. All right, do we have any other speakers?
I do. Terry D.
Morning, everybody. I'm a 50-plus year resident here. I don't know anybody here of the speakers. I've been attending meetings, listening to their concerns. And to all of you that have come up and spoke, I want to thank you very much for bringing this issue to light. Because if you didn't, I wouldn't know that this issue was this concerning. And I do appreciate it very, very much. I want you all to know that. Now, with the fact, Ms. Vagnosi, and just by listening to testimony, It is very concerning to me. You, in a position that you are in, if you are creating a hostile environment for my employees, I don't appreciate that. I encourage you that if you have suffered this from this individual, a hostile environment, I strongly encourage you to further any and all avenues afforded to you. Your legal rights, your rights to speak and to be believed. I believe you.
Ma'am, can you direct your
I
comments
believe
to us?
you.
Thank you.
And until proven otherwise. Used to be you were innocent until proven guilty. Today's environment, you are guilty until you're proven innocent. And I would ask that Jeanette Bagnozzi be removed immediately from her duties and placed in an environment where she has no contact with any individual's decision-making or of any interest in the current position that she's in. And I believe that to be fair, or to be placed on administrative leave until this matter has been resolved. I don't appreciate that my employees are having to come to work unhappy and disgruntled. They have the right to be believed, just as Ms. Bagnozzi does. Thank you.
Next is Sharon Harden.
Good morning, Mayor Stone, Upland City Council, and the Upland City residents. I would just like to be the voice of all of those that have spoken from the Upland Police Department, that our focus is not about negotiations. Our focus is just on the leadership of the city manager. So many of us have dedicated our lives to the city of Upland. We've sacrificed so much. We love our job, but we can't continue with what we're going through. Something has to give. Thank you.
I don't have any additional cards.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We will now recess into closed session and return when we return.
There's not going to be any reportable action, but we'll come out and say that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.